On June 17, 1631, in the military camp at Burhanpur in central India, Empress Mumtaz Mahal went into labor with her 14th child. She was 38 years old and had accompanied her husband Emperor Shah Jahan on a military campaign even in her pregnancy. The birth was difficult. Complications arose. And despite the best efforts of the court physicians, Mumtaz Mahal knew she was dying. She called for her husband. Shah Jahan rushed to her side, his heart breaking as he watched the woman he'd loved for nearly 20 years slipping away. With her final breaths, Mumtaz made 3 requests: care for their children, never remarry, and build a monument so beautiful that the world would never forget their love. Then she died, and Shah Jahan, the most powerful ruler in India, emperor of the Mughal Empire, broke completely. He went into mourning for 2 years. His hair turned white, his back bent with grief, and when he finally emerged from his sorrow, he began planning the greatest monument to love the world has ever known: the Taj Mahal. A structure so magnificent that the poet Rabindranath Tagore would later call it a teardrop on the cheek of time. This is the story behind the Taj Mahal. A love that began in a marketplace. A romance that lasted through war and politics and 14 children. A death that shattered an empire. And a monument that took 22 years and 20,000 workers to build. The story of Shah Jahan and Mumtaz Mahal, whose love created one of the 7 wonders of the world. The story begins in 1607, at the annual Meena Bazaar in Agra. This was a special marketplace where royal women could shop unveiled, and where they sold goods themselves. It was one of the few places where young noblewomen could appear in public. And on this particular day, 15-year-old Prince Khurram, the future Shah Jahan, was walking through the bazaar when he saw her. Arjumand Banu Begum. She was 14 years old, the daughter of Persian nobles who served at the Mughal court. She was selling silks and glass beads at her family's stall. And according to every historical account, Prince Khurram fell instantly, completely, hopelessly in love. Court chroniclers wrote that the prince was so captivated he could barely speak. He bought a piece of glass bead jewelry from her for 10,000 rupees, an absurdly high price, just to have an excuse to talk to her. When he returned to the palace, he immediately went to his father, Emperor Jahangir, and asked permission to marry her. But royal marriages in the Mughal Empire were complicated political affairs. They couldn't be rushed. Prince Khurram would have to wait. For 5 long years, he pursued her. He sent gifts. He wrote poetry. He made his intentions clear to everyone at court. And finally, in 1612, they were married. She took the name Mumtaz Mahal, which means jewel of the palace. And from that moment, they were inseparable. This wasn't a political marriage of convenience. This was genuine love, rare in royal households of the time. Prince Khurram had other wives, as was the custom and expectation for Mughal princes. But Mumtaz was different. She was his companion, his confidant, his closest advisor. She traveled with him on military campaigns. She sat with him during court proceedings. She bore his children and helped him make political decisions. When Prince Khurram became emperor in 1628, taking the title Shah Jahan, Emperor of the World, Mumtaz was given the imperial seal. This was extraordinary. The seal represented the emperor's authority. By giving it to Mumtaz, Shah Jahan was essentially making her his co-ruler. No decision was made without consulting her. No policy was enacted without her approval. Over 19 years of marriage, Mumtaz gave birth to 14 children. 8 survived infancy, which was actually a good survival rate for that era. Despite the constant pregnancies, Mumtaz remained politically active and personally devoted to Shah Jahan. Contemporary accounts describe her as beautiful, yes, but also intelligent, compassionate, and astute in matters of statecraft. The Mughal Empire in the early 1600s was at its peak. It controlled most of the Indian subcontinent, from Afghanistan to Bengal, from the Himalayas to the Deccan Plateau. It was fabulously wealthy. The Mughal court was legendary for its opulence, its art, its architecture. And Shah Jahan and Mumtaz presided over this empire together, partners in power and love. Then came 1631. Shah Jahan was campaigning in the Deccan, trying to suppress a rebellion. Mumtaz, heavily pregnant with their 14th child, insisted on accompanying him. She always did. She'd been with him on campaigns before, even while pregnant. She refused to be separated from him. They were at Burhanpur when she went into labor. Something went wrong. Perhaps it was her age. Perhaps it was the stress of travel during pregnancy. Perhaps it was simply bad luck. The baby, a daughter named Gauhar-Ara Begum, survived. But Mumtaz did not. Historical accounts describe Shah Jahan's grief as overwhelming. He didn't leave her side as she lay dying. When she finally passed, he locked himself in his chambers for 8 days, refusing to see anyone, refusing to eat. When he finally emerged, witnesses said his hair had turned white and his back was bent as if he'd aged 30 years overnight. Shah Jahan ordered the entire Mughal court into official mourning for 2 years. No celebrations. No music. No festivities of any kind. The empire grieved with its emperor. Mumtaz was initially buried in a garden palace in Burhanpur. But this was always meant to be temporary. Shah Jahan had made her a promise. He would build a monument worthy of their love. Within months of her death, Shah Jahan began planning. He assembled the greatest architects from across the Mughal Empire and beyond. Ustad Ahmad Lahori is generally credited as the chief architect, though many others contributed to the design. The site chosen was on the banks of the Yamuna River in Agra, visible from the Agra fort where Shah Jahan had his palace. He wanted to be able to see the monument every day. The vision was unprecedented. Shah Jahan didn't want just a beautiful tomb. He wanted to create paradise on earth. In Islamic tradition, paradise is described as a garden with flowing rivers. The Taj Mahal would be exactly that. A garden tomb, with a mausoleum at its center, reflected in a long pool, surrounded by symmetrical gardens representing the 4 gardens of paradise. Construction began in 1632. The foundation required deep pilings driven into the riverbank. The platform alone, on which the entire structure would rest, took years to complete. Then came the materials. White marble was quarried from Makrana in Rajasthan, over 200 miles away. Semi-precious stones for the intricate inlay work came from all over Asia. Jade from China. Turquoise from Tibet. Lapis lazuli from Afghanistan. Sapphires from Sri Lanka. Carnelian from Arabia. Over 20,000 workers were employed on the project. Sculptors, calligraphers, stone carvers, mosaicists, painters. Master craftsmen from Persia, the Ottoman Empire, and across India. 1,000 elephants transported materials. The logistics were staggering. And the cost was enormous, though exact figures are disputed. Some estimates suggest it consumed a significant percentage of the empire's entire annual revenue. The design itself is a masterpiece of symmetry and Islamic architecture. The main structure is perfectly square. 4 minarets stand at the corners of the platform, each one slightly tilted outward so that if an earthquake brought them down, they'd fall away from the tomb rather than onto it. The central dome rises 240 feet above the platform, crowned with a bronze finial that catches the sun. But it's the details that make the Taj Mahal extraordinary. The entire exterior is covered in intricate marble inlay work, semi-precious stones arranged in floral patterns so precise that not a single flower repeats across the entire structure. Quranic verses in black marble calligraphy decorate the entrances. The proportions are so perfect that the building seems to change appearance depending on the time of day and the angle of the light. At dawn, the marble glows pink in the rising sun. At noon, it's brilliant white. At sunset, it turns gold and orange. Under a full moon, it seems to glow from within with an ethereal silver light. Shah Jahan wanted the monument to reflect different moods, different moments, just as his love for Mumtaz had encompassed every aspect of his life. The interior is equally stunning. The main chamber houses the cenotaphs of Shah Jahan and Mumtaz Mahal. These are the monuments visitors see. But the actual graves are in a crypt below, in accordance with Islamic tradition. The cenotaphs are surrounded by a marble screen so delicately carved it seems like lace. Light filters through pierced marble windows, creating patterns that shift throughout the day. The gardens were designed with equal care. 4 water channels divide the garden into 4 sections, representing the 4 rivers of paradise. Cypress trees line the pathways, symbolizing death and eternity. Fruit trees represent life. The long reflecting pool creates a mirror image of the Taj Mahal, doubling its beauty. Construction of the main mausoleum was completed in 1643, 11 years after it began. But work on the gardens and auxiliary buildings continued for several more years. The entire complex wasn't finished until 1653, 22 years after construction started. 6 months after her death, Mumtaz's body was exhumed from its temporary grave in Burhanpur and brought in a golden casket to Agra. She was finally laid to rest in the Taj Mahal, in the paradise her husband had built for her. Shah Jahan had fulfilled his promise. He had never remarried. He had cared for their children. And he had built the most beautiful monument in the world. But his story was far from over. And it would not have a happy ending. In 1657, Shah Jahan fell seriously ill. His sons, seeing an opportunity, began fighting over who would succeed him. The third son, Aurangzeb, was the most ruthless. He defeated his brothers in a brutal civil war. He killed 2 of them. He imprisoned the third. And then, in 1658, he overthrew his father and declared himself emperor. Shah Jahan was placed under house arrest in Agra fort. He was not mistreated. He lived in comfortable quarters with attendants and was provided with food and luxuries. But he was a prisoner. And from his rooms in the Museum Burj, an octagonal tower, he could see the Taj Mahal across the river. For 8 years, the deposed emperor gazed at the monument he'd built for his beloved wife. He could see it in the morning light. He could watch the sun set behind its dome. On moonlit nights, he could see it glowing silver across the water. It was a constant reminder of the woman he'd loved and lost. The greatest achievement of his life. And he could never visit it. Never stand beside her tomb. Never walk through the gardens they designed together. On January 22, 1666, Shah Jahan died at age 74. His daughter Jahanara, who had been allowed to stay with him during his imprisonment, was at his bedside. She later wrote that with his final breath, he whispered Mumtaz's name. Aurangzeb had initially planned to bury his father elsewhere. But Jahanara and others convinced him that Shah Jahan should be buried beside Mumtaz Mahal in the Taj Mahal. And so the emperor who had built paradise on earth for his wife was finally laid to rest beside her. Today, their tombs lie side by side in the crypt beneath the main chamber. The symmetry of the original design is slightly broken by Shah Jahan's tomb, which was added later. But he's there. After 8 years of gazing at the monument from across the river, he finally joined her in the paradise he'd created. The Taj Mahal has endured for nearly 4 centuries. It survived wars, invasions, and political upheaval. During the Indian Rebellion of 1857, British soldiers allegedly pried out precious stones from the walls. During World War II, the entire structure was covered with bamboo scaffolding to disguise it from Japanese bombers. In recent decades, pollution from Agra's factories has threatened the marble, turning it yellow. Conservation efforts continue to protect and preserve the monument. In 1983, UNESCO designated the Taj Mahal a World Heritage Site. It's been included in various lists of the 7 wonders of the world. Between 4 and 6 million visitors come to see it every year. They walk through the gardens. They stand before the white marble facade. They photograph the reflection in the pool. And they hear the story of Shah Jahan and Mumtaz Mahal. But there are darker aspects to this story that are sometimes overlooked. Shah Jahan was an emperor who commanded vast wealth and power. The Taj Mahal was built with resources extracted from the empire, including through taxation that burdened ordinary people. The 20,000 workers who built it toiled for years, and while they were paid, they were not doing this labor purely out of love for the project. There are legends, almost certainly false, that Shah Jahan had the hands of the chief architects cut off so they could never build anything as beautiful again. There are stories, also likely untrue, that he planned to build a second Taj Mahal in black marble on the other side of the river for himself. These are myths. But they speak to the way extraordinary monuments can inspire both wonder and darker speculation. And we should acknowledge that Mumtaz Mahal died during her 14th childbirth. 14 pregnancies in 19 years. However deep Shah Jahan's love was, however genuine his grief, Mumtaz's life was still defined by bearing children in an era of high maternal mortality. Her death was not unusual for her time. But it was also not inevitable. It was the result of constant pregnancy in a world with limited medical knowledge. The Taj Mahal is many things. It's an architectural masterpiece, a triumph of design and engineering. It's a symbol of the Mughal Empire at its peak. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site and a major tourist destination that brings millions of visitors and billions of rupees to India's economy. And yes, it's a monument to love, one of the most famous and recognizable in the world. But it's also a reminder of the complexity of history, of the way beauty and tragedy intertwine, of the fact that great monuments are built by ordinary people whose names we don't remember, of the way love, even profound love, exists within systems of power and inequality. When you stand before the Taj Mahal, you're seeing many stories at once. The story of a grief-stricken emperor who channeled his sorrow into creating something beautiful. The story of thousands of craftsmen who spent years of their lives perfecting every detail. The story of Mumtaz Mahal, a woman who was beloved by her husband but who died young after a life of constant childbearing. The story of the Mughal Empire, its wealth and power and eventual decline. The Taj Mahal has inspired countless poets, artists, and writers. Mark Twain called it a vision, a dream, a poem, a splendor. Rudyard Kipling described it as the embodiment of all things pure. The poet Muhammad Iqbal wrote that it represented one of the great architectural achievements of Islamic civilization. And Rabindranath Tagore gave it perhaps its most famous description, a teardrop on the cheek of time. That phrase captures something essential about the Taj Mahal. It's beautiful, yes. But it's beautiful because of grief. It exists because of death. It's a monument to something that was lost. A teardrop, frozen in marble and stone, commemorating a love that ended too soon. Today, conservation efforts continue to protect the Taj Mahal from pollution, erosion, and the wear of millions of visitors. The Archaeological Survey of India carefully maintains the structure. Access is limited to protect it. No vehicles are allowed near the monument to reduce pollution. Visitors must remove their shoes or wear protective covers before entering the main chamber. The Taj Mahal endures. After nearly 400 years, it still draws visitors from around the world. People come to see its beauty, to admire its architecture, to photograph its famous facade, and to connect, however briefly, with a love story from centuries ago. Shah Jahan and Mumtaz Mahal have been dead for over 350 years. The Mughal Empire that they ruled has been gone for over a century and a half. The world they lived in, with its emperors and empires and rigid hierarchies, has vanished. But the monument remains. The paradise Shah Jahan built for his beloved still stands on the banks of the Yamuna River, exactly as he intended. And perhaps that's the real power of the Taj Mahal. Not just its physical beauty, though that's undeniable, but its ability to connect us across centuries to fundamental human experiences. Love, loss, grief, the desire to create something lasting in a world where everything eventually fades. Every sunrise that illuminates the Taj Mahal's marble, every moonbeam that reflects in its pool, every visitor who stands before it in wonder, they all bear witness to a promise kept. An emperor's vow to his dying wife that the world would never forget their love. Shah Jahan kept that promise. The world has not forgotten. And as long as the Taj Mahal stands, the world never will. A teardrop on the cheek of time, marking a love that death could not end.